Hi, my name is Kathy Czepiel, and I work as the Connecticut Land Protection Manager at Save the Sound. What that means is I look for opportunities to protect and conserve land throughout Connecticut, and I also work on land conservation policy at the state level.
Awesome. We will bounce around a fair bit in the conversation, but could you talk a little bit about the process of what goes into finding land around the state to have a hand in conserving? How does that go?
Yeah, sure. Well, sometimes people come to us and they say, can you help us with this particular project? So one of my biggest projects that I'm working on right now is in Hamden, Connecticut, and we're working on helping the community in southern Hamden protect and preserve, well, first of all, get ownership of and then protect and preserve 102 acres of forested wetlands there. It has to be cleaned up first. As is true with a lot of the opportunities we have in Connecticut now, it's a brownfield. And so the owner of that parcel, Olin Corporation, is under a consent decree with the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection to clean it up. And the community is advocating for that to become a public park. So I have projects like that. And then sometimes we pay attention to the land that our water companies own. Water companies are actually the second largest owner of open space in Connecticut. And so we like to pay attention to land that they have that's not needed for the protection of our drinking water that might end up being sold off if we don't step in and try and get a conservation easement on it or make sure that the right opportunity is there for a municipality or a land trust to snatch that land up and take care of it themselves. So those are just a couple of examples of how those projects come to be.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I was speaking with somebody earlier about the parcel in Hamden, the Six Lakes project,
Yeah.
I believe is what we're talking about.
That's right.
From your perspective and the work that you're doing with it, is there any sense of a timeline as far as you can tell on, when certain steps might be achievable, or is it still kind of so early that the steps that are needed are seen, but not necessarily yet within grasp? How does it look from your perspective?
Yeah, well, the coalition that we helped to lead, it's called the Six Lakes Park Coalition, has its own timeline, which goes out about 5 years. But, we don't really have control over that. What we know is that there's a testing phase that we're in right now, which will be followed by a remediation plan and the cleanup of the property. And at the same time, we're working to try and get some land acquisition and long-term management questions answered and, kind of do some problem solving around that. So, 5 years would be great. I really hope that's what it takes. The thing about working on land conservation projects is that they take a long time. So my colleagues will finish a project and get a chance to celebrate, and I'll still be chugging along on the same thing I was working on before. So you do have to have a long view and be very, very patient.
Is that something that took you a while to learn or accept when you started doing this type of work?
That's a great question. I am not inherently a patient person. So in that way, this is actually a really good job for me because it forces me to just kind of slow down and stay calm and patient over a long project. So there's definitely, that's a challenge. That's a challenge for me, but also really good for me. And, I love the opportunity to keep working with the same people over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Because if you're moving fast through projects, you don't have that opportunity to develop long-term relationships. And so that's one really wonderful thing about these long land conservation projects is that you really get to know people and form some really valuable personal relationships along the way.
That is wonderful. I am by nature a pretty patient person, and
Good
but
for
I
you.
also but I like that about myself when it works. I find it harder and harder and harder as time goes on to have that be my baseline as it has been for so long. I don't know whether that's the the state of the world, the fact that I've got a 4 and a 9-year-old who now tests my patients constantly, or what it is. But
having little kids will do that for sure.
But having, a way that you spend your day on the regular that forces you to live in that mindset sounds like a pretty nice thing. And also, just like you said, like being able to establish and build and maintain relationships over the course of a project, that's a pretty wonderful thing too. Most of my projects these days are like a few months at a time. And then, sometimes we're lucky enough to get to repeat them in years, down the road. And so there have been some folks with whom I work every year for quite a while, but otherwise it's not a regular feature of my work.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So we're going to bounce back here. When we spoke on the phone the other day, there was, I believe you suspected you had an idea why Save the Sound, mentioned you as somebody who we might try to
I checked in with my colleagues, so yeah.
Did they confirm?
I did, yeah.
I would love to hear your thoughts on that at this point in our conversation.
Well, I'm one of the go-to people to talk to about solar panels. And it's not because I have solar panel expertise by any means. My job is not in green energy, but I have solar panels on my roof at home, and I love them, and I'm an evangelist for them. And the very best part of them is that I also drive an EV, so I plug my car in to my, charger at home, and then I unplug it and I drive off on the power of the sun. It's incredible. It blows my mind still, and I've had the car for 2 years. It blows my mind that I'm driving on the power of the sun. Now, naysayers will say that's not really true because we are connected into the grid. And yes, when we're producing the power, it's going into the grid. And then when we need power, we're pulling it back out. But essentially, that's what we're doing. And of course, also powering all of our electrical appliances in the house, all of our electricity needs with those panels. And we were really, really lucky because, the federal rebates now are going away, unfortunately. It's really terrible because, we have a middle-class family, and there's no way we could have entered this, green infrastructure opportunity without those federal rebates. So there are still rebates for people at the state level, and it's one of the things I found interesting as we were trying to decide about getting these panels was that, everybody tries to figure out when they're going to start saving money on their panels. And even the solar panel salespeople, that's what they'll do. They'll show you a chart that shows you the, line graph of when your panels are going to pay off. And at some point, we realized that saving money wasn't really the point. First of all, you can't really figure out when that point's going to happen because there are a couple of completely unknown variables. One of them is how much is electricity going to go up, the cost of electricity going to go up. And all you know is it's going to go up, but you don't know by how much. And the other thing you don't know is how much the value of your house will be improved by having panels on your roof. But we looked around our neighborhood and saw how many other people had solar panels, and we thought, by the time we sell this house, we might be at a disadvantage if we don't have them. Yeah. So, after realizing I couldn't really game the numbers, I thought, I want to have these panels on my roof. I want to be energy independent to the extent that it's possible, and I want to do. I want to contribute to the solution. So if you're lucky enough to be able to afford to do that, I have absolutely nothing but good things to say about it. It's a really positive experience, and especially if you have a car you can plug into your solar panels.
Yes. And from, I guess, most people who might hear this are similarly also, just normal people who, aren't solar engineers or anything like that. They're folks who, either are just regular people with solar panels or regular people interested in them, perhaps. When you were looking around beforehand and making the decision, all right, is this a thing we're going to do? Did you have any sense at that point that you would be so happy about it and become an evangelist for having them? Or did it seem like this is a decision that we're kind of weighing things out and making based on, even though you can't foresee the numbers, as you're saying, and the money, I was like, this is a thing that seems worth it.
Yeah.
Or did you know that, like, when you did this, it was going to feel great?
No, I didn't know. I was a little scared. It seemed like a big step. Anytime
Huge.
you make a big investment in your house, it
Yeah.
feels like a really big step.
Yes.
And it's kind of it's not a no turning back thing. Like you could take the panels down and go back to the system the way it was, but that would cost money. So it did feel like a big decision, and I wasn't sure. So yeah, we took a little bit of a leap of faith, but it wasn't that difficult in the sense that, again, like, we had a lot of neighbors with panels. We are not early adopters. So, we talked to a lot of people, and a couple of our neighbors were really helpful in helping us, answer our questions and figure out whether it was going to work for us.
That's great. Since you've done it, has anything surprised you, just as far as like having the system and the infrastructure in your house? Have there been hiccups or maintenance things that you've needed to deal with, or is it pretty much it just works? And
I'm just going to knock on wood right now and say, no, not yet.
I'm knocking for you as well.
Thank you. No, we've only had them for 3 years, so no problems yet. But, look, I'm going to, to be honest, there are issues with some of the companies going out of business. I mean, it's a new industry, and so it's not hiccup free. But no, I think the thing that surprises me the most is how dorky I am about them. I am not like usually that person, but sometimes I come home on a sunny day and I get out of the car and I just stand there and watch my meter running backwards for a little while. It's just so great.
I love it. I would be that dorky person, at least for a while. That is cool. Has there, as a person living in a neighborhood where you are not the only person, there are a number of houses around, do you have a sense of, like, does it feel like that collective choice, or the fact that a bunch of houses around you have different families have done this, neighbors have done this. How does that change the feeling of living in your neighborhood?
That's a great question. Let me think about that. How does it change living in the neighborhood?
Or impact, or, and it might not also.
I mean, I think the fact that that many people have done it before, and then people come to us and ask us, there's sort of a feeling of everybody helping everybody else out with this big sort of new question. And when people have a question or a problem with their panels, they'll hop on the neighborhood Facebook page and somebody will jump in and help them out. So it is really helpful to live in a community where solar is happening. I think if you were the very first person on your block or in your neighborhood, it could be a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
I know that sometimes people also worry about the visual effect. And the funny thing is our neighborhood is sort of oriented exactly with the compass. So a lot of people have panels on the south side of their roof, which is facing away from the street on one side and facing toward the street on the other side. So you'll drive down the street, and on one side of the street, you'll see all the panels, and on the other side, you won't. And it's not that those people don't have them. They're just on the back of the house. So it's kind of an interesting, I mean, visually, I don't think there's anything unattractive about them at all. Some people's roofs actually look fantastic with a nicely placed array on the north, on the south-facing roof.
Yeah, that's really cool. I used to live on boats for a while, and one of the things that I loved about that was, the systems that keep life going are it's not possible to take any of them for granted. Like you have on your boat your electricity plant, you have your sewage system, you have and you have to deal with them all intimately. And one of the things that I enjoyed about that was that since everybody's dealing with them, everybody's having to figure stuff out and make choices of what to get or how to fix what you have that's broken. And talking about those regular things is like stuff that happens in anchorages and mooring fields all the
Right.
time. And I miss that happening on a collective scale, when I'm living on land. It's just not, for whatever, I can think of the reasons why, but like, it has not happened in my experience living on land. And it delights me that is an element of solar that is happening in your neighborhood. And that sounds really cool to me.
I mean, the same thing is true actually of EV owners, where when we first got our EV, my husband drove over to charge it. We didn't have our charger installed yet, and he drove over to charge it at the, one of the shopping centers. And he was having trouble figuring it out. And somebody came over and said, "Hey, I just got my EV a month ago. Let me show you." And I've had that happen. Mostly we charge at home, but I've had that happen every time I've gone to a public charging place. If I have a problem, somebody's right there to step in and help. So there's a really nice sense of like, yeah, exactly what you were talking about. There's a really nice sense of, community.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's awesome. Well, I'm so glad that it has been such a positive experience for you all, and I am optimistic and hope that continues.
Yeah, thanks.
You bet. Going back to thinking about your work in land conservation again for a bit, what are some of, having to kind of check into the long view in just doing the work that you do? How, what is, like with the experience that you've had so far behind you, what is how does that pace of doing your work and envisioning the benefits that come out in the future of the work that you're trying to do and establish today? Like, I don't know if the question I'm asking is, how does that shape the way you look forward, or what is it that you see when you look forward at this moment in time? And maybe you could pick whichever one of those questions that that resonates more, if either of them do.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I really worry about is our forests, because obviously it takes a really long time for a forest to regenerate. And when it does, it's not the same forest. A lot of times if you cut down a bunch of trees, invasive species will move in, for example.
Yeah.
And so, when you talk about conservation projects being long-term projects, you have to start thinking beyond the scope of a human lifetime if you're going to talk about forest regeneration. And so I really worry about our forests because in Connecticut, we're the fourth most developed state in the nation. And we don't have a lot of forested land left. And a lot of the forest land we have left is privately owned. 75% of Connecticut's forested land is privately owned. And so, of course, we believe in personal property rights, and we let people do a lot of things with their forests, including cutting them down and putting in all kinds of different development structures. And so that just really worries me as I watch our forests getting eaten away, because if you don't have contiguous forests, that's a real issue for our wildlife populations. And trees do so many important jobs for us that I think most people are probably unaware of. They filter our storm water, they breathe out oxygen, they actually also send water out into the atmosphere. They provide us shade, and not just if you're standing under it, but for example, in a place like Six Lakes where you have 102 acres of forest, that forest is actually cooling off the entire neighborhood around it. So there are an awful lot of things that trees do, especially when they're together, that we all take for granted. So I worry a lot about our forests and what's happening to them. I think about that in policy terms as well. What can we do to protect them more? But I guess I also, a lot of us are thinking in short term, like, okay, well, there's a midterm election coming up, or, there's a presidential election coming up. We're thinking in terms of election cycles. And because I'm working in land conservation, maybe I'm thinking in much longer terms. And in a way, that's helpful because you no longer see that short-term goal as the thing you've got to strive for. You're just the old saying, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and you're looking way past those goalposts and continuing to just do what you do. One of the things we're really, really lucky to be able to do is to come to work every day and work on these problems that are really important to the world, and to have a focused, specific way in which to get up every morning and work on that. I've often talked with my colleagues about, in fact, I had this conversation this week with one of our land conservation partners, saying, wow, we're so lucky that we have a place to channel our energy when we're worried. And also, I watch volunteers trying to do that. And not only is it hard sometimes for them to find their focus, but it's also exhausting. Yeah. And, you can see volunteers burning out. And so we're really lucky, those of us who get to work in this field, to be able to just pace ourselves. It's our job. And you go home at the end of the day and, do whatever else you're going to do. And then you get up in the morning and you do it again. And there's a rhythm to it, and just a sort of a calm focus that a lot of people can't have because they're trying to fit this kind of advocacy in as volunteers around the rest of their work life. And that's really challenging.
Yeah. Fitting in anything. I mean, at this point in my life with young children, like fitting in anything outside
especially
of work
with
life and kids is something I find challenging at this point. And, especially being able to have the window into the experiences of folks who volunteer with you all, and whether it's keeping them in mind or folks perhaps who don't do that. Other folks who, are living their lives and, feeling those same frustrations that you voiced of like, what are we, how can we do, so much is happening in our world. What can we be doing? Is there anything that you have learned in your experiences that you can share with those folks who are probably the vast majority of folks perhaps living in Connecticut who might hear these stories? Whether there's anything that you can share with them, or to say this is something to do, or share as, I don't know, I don't want to, things that you see that are happening that folks may be able to appreciate, grab onto, be inspired by.
Feel better
and whether that's just feel better that it's happening, or feel that, things to do are accessible. I don't know. So it's a hazy question. Feel free to grab onto, whatever bits of it even make half sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people just feel overwhelmed, and so they're not doing anything because how do I even begin? And first of all, a great place to begin is to find an organization that you love and call them up or email them and say, what do you need people to do? Let somebody else decide and give you an assignment that they think is meaningful. And I mean, one of the things Save the Sound does is coastal cleanups, and we have dozens of them happening throughout the summer and the fall that people can sign up for. And that's a really wonderful way to do something concrete with a beginning and an ending. It's a couple of hours. You go out, you pick up a bunch of garbage off the beach. The beach looks better when you leave. You can feel like you've accomplished something. And I think those sorts of opportunities are really helpful because that sense that you've accomplished something is really important to help you keep going. So that's one thing I would say is find opportunities to do something that has a beginning and an end, and you're going to have a sense of accomplishment. But I guess, I am only reading the headlines right now pretty much, except in my field. So I get, a lot of information daily coming in about the work I'm doing, and I'm reading much more deeply in the area of my work. But I'm kind of, thinking, okay, well, I need to know a little bit about what's going on, but I don't need to be taking a deep dive into everything that is everybody else is working on, and I can't work on everything at once. So somebody shared a quote with me last fall, I guess, that really stuck with me, and I wrote it down and stuck it up on my bulletin board at home, and it said, "Your focus is resistance." And meaning you have to figure out what it is that you're going to focus on and trust that other people are working on other things that you're not working on. Don't feel like you have to do everything yourself, because that's when it just becomes overwhelming. So figuring out where your focus is, where your gifts are, where your talents are, where your skills are, and picking something and just focusing on it so that, and knowing that other people are focusing on the other things, so that you don't get that sense of just being overwhelmed by how big the problem of climate change is. None of us are going to solve that by ourselves. And you can do little things at home, like I just switched out my paper napkins for cloth napkins because one of my colleagues did that for us at work, and I was like, that's so smart and obvious. So finding little things like that too. And it's a process. It lasts forever. There's not a point at which we're all going to go, yay, we solved climate change. And that's not going to happen. It's sort of accepting that this is something we're going to be doing our whole lives, and you don't have to do it all at once. You're going to start with one little piece. And then maybe when you've mastered the cloth napkins, you're going to move on to something else, So not taking, I think those are two pieces of the same kind of advice, which is to, just do what you can do now. And when you're ready, you can do a little bit more instead of thinking that you have to do everything.
Yeah. Is there anything that we have not yet spoken about, or that I haven't thought to ask about, Kathy, that comes to your mind as something that should be a part of this, or you thought would be and hasn't yet been?
No. And when I used to be a reporter, I always asked that question at the end. And sometimes the most amazing stuff would come out at the end.
You're not wrong.
But I know. I wish I could give you something amazing that I was holding back, but
You're already giving them good stuff, so I don't feel bad about that.
I hear the sound bites.
Oh my gosh. What is something, and it may be a repeat of things that you've said, what is an aspect of the work that you do that brings you the most satisfaction, or a notable amount of satisfaction?
I really love working with people. I'm a people person. I love working with a coalition of people who are coming together to accomplish something, the collaboration that's involved in that. One part of my job is to work with the Six Lakes Park Coalition, which was founded about 5 years ago when a former legislative council member, Justin Farmer, from the neighborhood came to Save the Sound and said, hey, can you guys help us out? And that coalition is going strong, and I just really enjoy the time I spend with all of those people trying to figure, doing strategy and problem solving. It's really, that's an exciting part of my job.
That's awesome. Justin is who I was speaking with earlier. I love him.
Is he doing one of the interviews too?
Yeah, he did one of
great.
the interviews for this project.
Great.
I wish you all so much luck with that coalition. I hope it comes together.
Great,
It sounds
thank
like it
you.
would be a really wonderful change for
You would
that
think that's the
neighborhood.
only thing that's happening now that you've talked to Justin and me. There's a lot of other stuff going
Oh,
on.
no,
Maybe
no, no.
I should have focused on something else.
I have zero impression. No, I love the fact that it's something that came back up. I have no impression that that's the only thing that's going on. If anything, through talking with folks in these, I continue to be surprised by how much seems to be going on. Underneath the umbrella of Save the Sound, and then in coalitions that you all are part of and working on projects that exist outside of you in addition. I'm surprised by how much is.
There are only, I don't know exactly what the number is, but about 50 of us. And when
that's what I've heard.
when you find out everything that we're doing, it's incredible.
Yeah.
That it's being done by such a reasonably small staff.
Yeah.
I guess it's a medium-sized staff, maybe, but it's, you know, not as many people as you would think you would need to do all the things that we do.
That's
Yeah.
what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Kathy, thank you so much for
Yeah.
coming up to speak with us and be a part of this project. It's been wonderful to talk with you. And
Yeah,
I'm
nice
glad
to
your
talk
voice
with
is a
you
part of
too,
it.
Jay. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. You bet. Most welcome.